Hey there, welcome to the lesson. For this one, we're going to take a look at how we might look at and approach diminished patterns and sounds and see if we can make use of them, because I know that sometimes the world of diminished can be kind of this whole mysterious, almost elusive kind of thing. And I hope to demystify some things, or at least give you a way you can make more practical use of it and see it maybe in more places than before. For some people, it might be a first look at it and like a little intro. For others, it might be something to add to what you already know and the patterns you already do. So I've broken it down into 4 sections for the video. In one section, we're going to look at how we can connect diminished patterns to dominant chords and connect them to larger arpeggio forms. And then in another section, we'll look at how we can think of our diminished patterns starting at different places in our diatonic chord family. Then the third example will be some really cool kind of diagonal movement that we can create, and then in that one we'll connect it to minor pentatonic. So we get different ways we can use it for different contexts. And then lastly, I did like a little backing track, jam track to stash, and I'll give some ideas and little pointers and things that might get you started on practicing to that, so you can make use of the backing track and practice some of this stuff in the video. Okay, so first we'll look at how we can connect our diminished sound to some larger arpeggio patterns. And the idea here is that everything is going to be coming from me using the 6th diminished scale as a default scale pattern, and then everything else comes from there. So it just will require a little bit of explanation. And then I did a video, an intro to the 6th diminished scale. I'll put a link to that video, so you may want to watch that one even maybe before this one, although if you watch this one and go back, it could help make sense of it too that way. But let's take a look at the 6th diminished scale and why it has these diminished implications to it. So the scale itself, I'm going to start in the key of C. We're going to go 8th fret of the low E string. So far everything is just the major scale. Now here's the extra note that we add in 6th diminished scale, and then we complete the rest of the scale. And if you wanted to take it another octave, there it is again. So we're taking a major scale and adding the sharp 5 to it. So again. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that scale in particular. Like I said, maybe go back and watch the intro that I did to it. The big impact that that note has is that it creates more diminished sounds than we had before with the normal 7-note scale. So now, what we're going to do is take that extra note, which was a G sharp in the key of C, and then see what happens if we add it to a couple chords that we already have in our key. So the biggest thing that the 6th diminished scale does is it gives you a dominant chord not only for going to the 1 chord, to your Ionian, but also it gives you a dominant chord that leads you to your relative minor, to the Aeolian mode. So this is what we're going to do, is put the pinky finger on the 15th fret of the low E string. We're going to do a G7 flat 9 arpeggio, and I think you'll hear the diminished part of it pretty quickly. So here we go. And then we're going to resolve that tension back to C. So again, we start out with just a G7, then a flat 9, complete that portion of the arpeggio, and then descend to C, so that we create tension and then release. Now the next thing we're going to do is create a dominant chord to lead to our relative minor. So the relative minor of C is A minor, so that means E7 is going to be our dominant chord. We're going to make it E7 flat 9 again, because that is going to create the diminished sound. So here's our E7, and the way we're getting the E7 is because remember that we added a G sharp with the 6th diminished scale. So here's our G sharp. Now F is in the key of C, so that isn't really anything new. Then we do G sharp, and this part's going to sound diminished, because it is. And then we'll resolve it to A minor. Okay, so we have a G7 flat 9 leading to the major, and we have an E7 flat 9 leading to the minor. Let me do that one more time. In the description, I'll put a link to 3 different worksheets. The one that matches the one we just did, I mapped out those 2 7 flat 9 chords in every key going through the circle of fifths, so you can practice it in more than just one key. But just keep in mind that the pattern is the same no matter which key you're in. For this particular way we're doing it, you just shift where your starting point is. But it's really good to go through all your keys and just know how to hit it from different spots. Okay, now for the next section, we'll look at a little bit of a different concept, but ties in and helps us accomplish the same sound in our playing. So the other implication of that 6th diminished scale is that if we add a G sharp to the 2nd degree, the 4th degree, and then add it to, we're going to create another chord on the flat 6 of the key, and then the 7th, then we have all our diminished chords inside of the key of C. So here's what I mean. Starting on the 2nd, which is D in the key of C, we can go like this. And first I'm going to resolve it to the major like we did for the last exercise, but then I'm going to do the same thing with a different fingering to lead to the relative minor. So here we go, starting on D, because that's the 2nd of C. And then we're going to slide up to a C like that, and then start a new diminished pattern. It's going to start out the same on the 4th, which is F. Slide up to a C shape here. Then we're going to go to the flat 6 or the sharp 5, either way you want to think of it. We're going to do the same pattern to start. And then slide up to another version of C. And then lastly, we'll start on a B, which is the 7th, and do the same pattern to start. But then at the end, we'll resolve back to C. I'll do that again. Then start on the 4th. Back to C. Start on the sharp 5 or minor 6. Start on the 7th. So now, whether or not you use that particular pattern, that little kind of meandering diagonal pattern to lead back to the chord, the main point is the concept that you can think of your diminished patterns and runs or chord shapes starting on the 2nd, the 4th, the sharp 5 or minor 6, whichever way you want to think of that, and then the 7th. You can start on all those spots because diminished is just a stacking of minor thirds, and each one of those intervals is a minor third apart from each other. Okay, now let's take the same idea starting on the 2nd, the 4th, the sharp 5, and the 7th, but now let's use it as a way to lead into the relative minor, which again for the key of C will be A minor. Now also, like the last worksheet, I made a separate worksheet that goes through all 12 keys. This worksheet's pretty long. There are 4 different spots you can lead back to C major, or whatever the root of your major key is, and then 4 spots you can lead back to your relative minor. There are obviously other spots on the guitar, but for this particular approach, there are 4 for each. So here we go, leading into the relative minor using diminished patterns on the 2nd, 4th, sharp 5, and 7. Starting on D, ring finger. A minor. Slide up to F, which is the 4th. Same pattern to start. Leading up to A minor. Now start on G sharp, which is the sharp 5. Same pattern at first. To lead back to A minor. Start on B, which is the 7th. And that will lead back up to A minor. Okay, so now let's go to the third concept, which will be to take a similar diagonal pattern, but now the context here will be a little different. I'm thinking now of more of a bluesy kind of situation where you want to create a little extra tension. So we're going to try to use the diminished patterns and then as a way to create tension and then tie it back into the minor pentatonic. I'm thinking of, for this example, like an A blues, kind of like, you know, that kind of thing. And what we're going to do is make our A7, which is kind of, you know, what you would do in the blues typically. We're going to make it, instead of sound just like a dominant chord, we're going to make it sound like a 7 flat 9 chord, which is what creates the tension. So I'm going to start on the 3rd fret of low E and do a little pattern that's going to go like this. Minor pentatonic. Again, a little faster. And notice that I use a slide for each new position. Now I'm going to start a minor 3rd up from there and tie it into the next spot in the minor pentatonic. Do that again, starting on 6 of E. Now the next spot we can do it is up here on 9th fret, because we're just going in minor 3rd intervals and starting our pattern. So the goal here is that we are using the diminished to create tension and then tie it into something familiar with minor pentatonic. Now the last one we'll do here for this exercise is going to start on 12 of E, because again, it's a minor third up. So let's go through all 4 of those positions and put them together. Now 6. Now 9. Ready, and 12th fret. So that way you can take a little bit of diminished and tie it into more of a bluesy context. The idea here is that you have these patterns that are really beautiful and symmetrical in a lot of ways, and you can use them in a modal kind of way, you know, and get kind of tricky with where you put them into things. You can do them in more obvious ways. There are so many different ways you can do it. So hopefully this gives you some different perspectives and some ideas just to get started. Now, lastly, let's look at some options for the Stash jam track that I did, and just a little background on how we'll get to where we're going. So the song is, you know, really for the most part is in the key of F. You know, D minor is the sound that we're going for. Now in the section that I did the track for, it's in the jam. Although in the jam they tend to kind of vamp for a while and then come back to the progression, so I just kept the progression going because that's kind of some of the where some of the best opportunities for diminished come from, or some of those chord changes. So we'll go D or D minor 7 to B flat, then E half diminished, E diminished, and then back to D minor, and that's what it's going to do the whole time. Now, let's see if we can make sense of this using the 6th diminished scale, like I mentioned earlier. So if we're in the key of F, and we're adding the sharp 5, the note that would be is a C sharp, because in the key of F, C is the 5th, and then C sharp is the sharp 5. So let's just maybe lay that out real quick. You can do it anywhere, but I'll do it up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sharp, 5, 6, 7, and then back to the root. Okay, so again, that note is a C sharp that we're adding. Keep that in mind. So now, the D minor is what it is. There's nothing, you know, we can do D minor pentatonic. We can do D Aeolian because we're in the key of F, and that would be the 6th degree of F. When the B flat chord comes, we have some cool things we can think of to put over that chord. In the key of F, your B flat is Lydian, so you can do some different kind of Lydian shapes. A Lydian chord is a chord that has a sharp 4, which is also the tritone, so that's going to have implications for diminished as well, because that's a fundamental thing for our diminished sound. So you can do a B flat type of arpeggio, but if you just drop the note down here on the B string, that would make it more of a Lydian sound. That kind of sound. Okay, now, the next chord, and you can do a bunch of different things over the B flat too. I'm just kind of keeping it moving here, just some little idea starters. Now the next chord is the E half diminished. Now I found that as I was playing through this, the mode that sounded the best to my ear, that really matched really well, was G Dorian over this. So G minor 6 chord patterns, or even just the mode, the scalar pattern itself. Now the reason that I'm saying that matches really well is this. If we break down what the notes are here, we've got an E, a B flat, a D, and a G. So all of those notes could also be arranged to make up a G minor 6 chord. It's just kind of flipping around the order a little bit. So again, it's got an E, a B flat. So the E is the major 6 of G minor. B flat is the minor 3rd. D is the 5th. And F, G is the root. So you've got all the notes there for a G minor 6 chord. So I found that when it got time for this chord, I was really enjoying doing G Dorian. Now the last chord, now remember that the special note that we added for 6th diminished scale that we're going to apply to this scenario was a C sharp. And what we're doing, the difference between E half diminished is half diminished has a D natural, and then the full diminished voicing has a C sharp, which is the minor 3rd interval from the last chord tone. So now, another way to think of that would be an A7 flat 9. And so in the jam track, when I was doing a playthrough, that's what I was thinking of in my head, was kind of like the first worksheet that we went over in this video, connecting the diminished sound to an arpeggio that I know really well, which is A7, and I can find that really quickly, and then because I can find that chord quickly, then I can create that diminished sound using that as kind of like a roadmap. So I would do things like which is basically what we did in the beginning of the video, but just in the key of F instead of the key of C. Then there's some patterns you can do up here, which is basically just the same thing. A7s are all over the place. You can do it here. You can do it like this and create diminished. Here. Where else? Here. Basically, the way it works is anything you can do in one spot diminished, you can move in minor 3rd intervals and accomplish that same kind of sound, but kind of rearrange it and invert it. So I hope that that gives you some ideas of how you can approach this topic that can be really vast. And this is just, scratching the surface. There's no way I can share everything I know, and I have so much to learn too in one video, but hopefully this gets you started and inspires you to play around with it a little bit. And I also wanted to say that even if you feel like this is kind of a complicated topic and maybe you don't feel quite ready for it, I would say just maybe take a look at it and just dip your toes in the water a little bit. You don't have to master it in a week or anything like that, but it could be a really cool thing just to experiment with and start to get familiar with and begin the journey of bringing this into your own vocab. It's kind of like learning some really nice, fancy words that you want to kind of get into your normal everyday vocab, and it just takes a while until it becomes fluid, and it's just a matter of time. So have fun with it, enjoy it. I probably missed a bunch of things, so let me know if you have any questions or if anything didn't make sense. I'll try to explain it the best I can. Check out the worksheets below. They're free. You can download them, print them. And thanks so much. I'll see you next time.